First of all, thank you for receiving us. Thank you for visiting Brussels. Thank you for having us and letting us do this interview in such a special moment.
Yes.
Very interesting moment in terms of geopolitical in big scale and also in a smaller scale in the European Union and their neighbors. So thank you for that. And first of all, of course, I would like to ask about the current situation with Armenia. So where are we right now? We all know there have been deadly clashes at the border less than 1 month ago. And both sides, of course, claim responsibility. It's not on their side, but on the others. So I would like to know, what has happened in these last events, and where are we right now?
It's more than 1 year passed since the war ended, and in general, situation is relatively stable. If we talk about area of responsibility of the Russian peacekeeping forces in the area of Karabakh, situation is more stable than on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And the reason is that Armenia, unfortunately, did not put down the attempts to take revenge. The loss in the Second Karabakh War was very painful for them. It was absolutely demolishing the ideological grounds, the propaganda for almost 30 years about the unbeatable army, about their strength, about the bravery of the soldiers and commanders. Because during the 44 days war, Armenian army was totally destroyed, and they had to sign Capitulation Act on November 10 last year, actually agreeing to give back the territories which we did not manage to recapture during the 44 days war. And therefore, the signs of revanchism is visible in Armenian society, in the political spectrum. Therefore, understanding that in the area where the Russian peacekeepers are serving, it is not possible. They're trying to make provocations, military provocations, on the state border. Another issue is that the state border between Azerbaijan and Armenia was not identified, because the occupation of that part of Azerbaijan was taking place in the beginning of the 90s, right after the restoration of independence of both countries. Therefore, physically and politically, it was not possible to demarcate and delimitate the border. Therefore, when the Second Karabakh War ended last November, the climatic situation in that part of the area was different from other parts. It's a high mountains and it was full of snow. So the snow started to melt in May this year. As soon as it happened, Azerbaijani forces were moving towards the state border and took the positions on the state border based on our understanding where this border is going. So that was the story, and unfortunately Armenia started to make claims that Azerbaijan is interfering into Armenians' territory without any grounds. So we are standing now where we think it's our territory, and we, from the very first days of the end of the Karabakh War, made a proposal to Armenia to start working on delimitation, to establish a joint working group on delimitation, and to clarify all the disputes on the table. During this more than 1 year after the war ended, there have been several attempts by Armenia to make military provocations on the state border. All of them failed. As a result of all these attempts, they lost their military positions, and Azerbaijan strengthened its position on the state border. The same happened last month, when they deliberately provoked Azerbaijani forces, and it lasted several days, and during the first days there was no shooting, just Azerbaijani soldiers, explained them that it's not their territory, they have to leave, and they left. But they started to launch artillery attacks on us, and we had several victims and several wounded. Now situation is stable. We did not plan anything ourselves, otherwise we wouldn't have stopped. The clash on 16th of November lasted less than 1 day. It started in the morning and ended at around 6, 7 p.m. So if we planned it, we wouldn't have stopped, because Armenia doesn't have a military capability to stop us in any destination. We don't have these plans, therefore we stopped. We want peace, it's enough of war. We want stability, predictability, and zero risk for any kind of attempt from Armenia to take revanchist actions. Therefore, we'll be very closely watching all their maneuvers, all their regroupings, and all the attempts to once again create a military potential that can be a danger for us. If we see it happens, we will destroy it immediately, and they know it, and international players know it. If we see positive dynamics, we definitely will take advantage of that and make contribution to strengthen peace.
Mr. President, when do you think we will be able to talk about a real peace treaty with Armenia and not only ceasefires?
That's a question which probably should be addressed to Armenia. I, on several occasions, publicly made a statement that Azerbaijan is ready to start peace negotiations with Armenia and to start working on peace agreement. There have been no answer from Armenian leadership so far, because these kind of statements were made by me for more than 6 months, several times. So this shows that they don't want peace, because peace agreement, if signed, one of the main provisions of this peace agreement will be mutual recognition of territorial integrity of both countries. And Armenia doesn't want to recognize territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. The whole world recognizes Azerbaijan's territorial integrity and recognizes Karabakh as an integral part of Azerbaijan. Armenia doesn't say they do not recognize, doesn't say they recognize. Before the Second Karabakh War, they were saying, and their prime minister publicly was saying, that Karabakh is Armenian, period. That statement actually is a ruined negotiation process and was one of the elements of their bitter defeat last year. But now, from Armenia, as if there is no position on that. We say very openly, we want to start immediately negotiations on peace agreement with Armenia, a comprehensive agreement which will be, as you said, not a ceasefire, but a full peace agreement. But I hope that probably European partners will persuade Armenia that this position has no future. If they don't have peace agreement with Azerbaijan, I think they may suffer again in the future.
And are you willing to reopen the borders? I mean, this is linked to the previous question, of course. But in order to normalize relations with Armenia, are you willing to reopen the borders? And what are the conditions for this to happen?
Yes, we are willing to open the borders. And so far, there have been several rounds of negotiations in the framework of trilateral working group headed by the Deputy Prime Minister of Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Russian Federation. And the main purpose and task of this working group is to open communications. Several rounds of talks have been relatively successful. So now there is a full agreement about the opening of the railroad connection between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and we actually started to build the demolished railroad on the liberated territories towards Armenian border. At the same time, in previous months, Armenia was objecting the opening of the highway, but now we managed to persuade them that it's inevitable, and they also agreed on that. So there is understanding. Now we discuss about the legal regime of these corridors, the Zengezur corridor, which will go through Azerbaijan to Armenia and further down to Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic of Azerbaijan, the legal regime. And here we have certain issues still open. But I think both countries recognize that this must happen. And by the way, during the trilateral meeting in Sochi last month, held by President Putin, we adopted a declaration which clearly talks about opening of communication. So it will happen. And by the way, also airspace already is in activation. So Azerbaijan airlines flying from Baku to Nakhchivan started to cross Armenian airspace.
So when the meeting with the Armenian Prime Minister was announced here in Brussels, the statement from the EU side said the intention was to try to find ways of overcoming tensions for a prosperous and stable South Caucasus. Of course, I was thinking of this rail and autoroute connection via Armenia. But I don't know, what can we expect from this meeting here in Brussels?
Well, it's difficult to say because we have to see what will be the result of the meeting, which will take later today. But we in Azerbaijan highly appreciate the activity of European Commission and personally President of European Council, Mr. Charles Michel, who contributing a lot to creation ground for normalization of relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. President Michel's visit this summer to the region was very productive, and by the way, his initiative to establish a direct link between defense ministers of both countries also is working. So now this channel of communications already is efficient. So this clearly demonstrates the willingness and readiness of European Commission to facilitate in creation a stable environment in the Southern Caucasus and in the future to facilitate the establishment of the trilateral format of interaction between three Southern Caucasian countries. Azerbaijan's position is absolutely open and clear. We want peace, we don't want war. We won the war, we are the winners, and this reality should be taken into account. Nagorno-Karabakh conflict has been resolved. There is no return to any kind of discussions about so-called status of Nagorno-Karabakh or something of that. We resolved it ourselves by force and by political means. We implemented UN Security Council resolutions unilaterally after 27 years as they have been adopted. And this is a new reality which must be taken into account by Armenia in the first place. Because as far as we see the development of post-war situation, the main international actors already accepted the new reality and are trying to build the future based on this new reality. Armenia should refrain from any kind of hostile actions against Azerbaijan, should refrain from territorial claims to Azerbaijan, because I said a couple of times that we have much historical grounds to have territorial claims to Armenia, and to work on peace agreement and to comply with normal behavior in 21st century. We are neighbors anyway. None of us is going to fly away to another planet. Therefore, we must learn to live side by side and slowly, step by step, preparing grounds for normalization of relations, including people-to-people contacts. We openly said that we are ready for that, but so far we don't receive any positive sign from Armenia. It seems to me that in Armenia, the internal situation and, as I said before, the frustration and, mildly speaking, disappointment after the loss in the war created a kind of a psychological trauma in their society because of exaggerated expectations and unrealistic assessment of their military and political potential. Therefore, for the government of Armenia, it's important to lead the process of normalization, not to be behind the public opinion, which was based on cultivation of hatred against Azerbaijanis, to lead the public opinion, to make very important steps to persuade the people that the only way for Armenia to develop is to normalize relations with Azerbaijan, to normalize relations with Turkey, to become a neighbor, a normal neighbor, not a hostile neighbor, and to refrain from territorial claims. So I think that if this formula is accepted by Armenian government and political elite, we have chance for progress. But as far as we are concerned, our position is straightforward. I several times articulated that, and publicly, and once again I'm saying that we want peace, we want stability, security, and a prosperous future for the Caucasus.
In what way would you say this EU-driven contact here in Brussels differs from the last meeting in Sochi? And I mean, it looks much like a lot of the work has been already done, guided by Mr. Putin. So what would you say? This is the what are the differences of the contacts over here in Brussels?
Frankly speaking, I don't see any differences because I see the genuine desire of Russia and European Union to help to normalize relations between two countries. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend time with us and spend hours in these negotiations. And Russia and the EU are one of the main international actors. There's a lot of things for them to do, a very broad agenda, if they spend time and efforts, and not once, but regularly, to convene with leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia to discuss these issues. That means that the genuine desire is to help, and we appreciate that. And we don't see any kind of rivalry here, though some may think that the kind of a certain competition, not at all. As far as we're concerned, we see that these efforts are complementary. These efforts can support the peace process. And also I know that there have been interaction between President Putin and President Michel discussing many issues, including issues related to relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So I think that these efforts of international community, of institutions and countries which are interested in long-lasting peace may result in something very positive. Because after so many years of occupation and hostility, international players definitely should support the process. And also, if Armenia agrees to engage with us in elaborating the peace treaty, of course we'll need the international expertise. We'll need international partners which will help us to formulate the chapters, to formulate the basic principles, and to find a solution. So my expectations are related to this. Of course, everything will depend on how the today's meeting, trilateral meeting, will go. But our position is clear. We came here to strengthen positive dynamics.
A recent declaration of the International Court of Justice asks your government to take necessary measures to prevent the incitement and promotion, I'm reading literally, and promotion of racial hatred and discrimination targeted at persons of Armenian national or ethnic origin, and also to protect from violence and bodily harm all persons captured in relation to the 2020 conflict who remain in detention, and ensure their security and equality before the law. I would like to ask you what measures have been taken in this direction to address the situation?
First of all, I'd like to say that International Court also issued a preliminary assessment based on our case against Armenia, and I would say that the decision so far made by this institution is balanced. So if you read what is recommended to Armenia, you will probably see much more accurate and much more insisting wordings. But as far as we are concerned, in Azerbaijan, our state policy is aimed at normalization of relations. Therefore, that's our position, and I openly announce it. With respect to public opinion, one should understand that for almost 30 years, Armenia on the occupied territories committed a cultural genocide against Azerbaijani cultural heritage. Our cities and villages are leveled to ground. There have been thousands of international visitors, including journalists from Europe and other parts of the world, who saw with their own eyes what they've done to our historical monuments, to our cities and villages. Agdam does not exist, Fizuli does not exist. Totally leveled to ground, and that was done not during the First Karabakh War, but that was done during the years of occupation, deliberate demolishing of all the buildings, and destruction of our religious monuments. 65 out of 67 mosques have been totally destroyed. In 2 remaining, they kept pigs and cows in order to insult the feelings of Azerbaijanis. Therefore, it is natural that many people in Azerbaijan, especially those who lost their beloved ones, who lost their territory, they have negative feelings against Armenia. This is natural. It would be wrong if I say no, the war ended and now let's become friends. It will take time. But the issue is that the state policy, I several times said already, despite all these tragic events in our history, devastation and genocide in Khojaly, we need to turn the page of hatred. If we look to the future, if we want to build a stable situation, if we want to minimize completely the risk of a new war, we need to turn the page. So this is our policy. With respect to detained persons, Azerbaijan, after the Second Karabakh War ended, released before Armenia all the prisoners of war. And this can be proved by international observers. Those people which are now in detention, these people cannot be considered as prisoners of war because most of them have been sent to the liberated territories in the end of November, almost 20 days after the war ended, to commit acts of terror. And they committed these acts of terror, as a result of which several servicemen and civilians were killed. And they've been detained and brought to justice. And some of them were released on humanitarian grounds. We released so far more than 100 detainees. But those who committed crimes have been sentenced. So by no international convention, these people can be considered as a prisoners of war. Another thing is that some of the detainees, after we returned them, and we returned 10 of them just 10 days ago, some of them have been arrested in Armenia. And this is a very serious signal to us, to these people, to their relatives. We returned them to Armenia and they put them to prison. And probably they will torture them. They have very tough practice because what our hostages tell about the terrible time they spent in Armenian prison shows that these people will be suffering a very hard tortures. Therefore, if we return more, they will put them to prison. So this is a real fact, and it can be verified.
Let me please ask you again regarding the prisoners of war, because there are claims not only by Armenia, but by international institutions, saying there are still dozens, nobody really knows. There was this recent exchange of prisoners of war for mine maps in your territory. And I would like to know if there is a list of people, and if you are willing to share that list of people that have been detained. You claim they are terrorists, from the other side they claim they are prisoners of war. Is there any chance that we can have a list with names and numbers? And
it's not a secret at all, and the list is known, and international institutions know, and Armenians know. For instance, as a result of their military provocation in the middle of November, more than 30 Armenian military servicemen have been detained. One of them was wounded, and our doctors took care of him They made a medical surgery, and he recovered. And as soon as he recovered, we sent him back. And this is a real story which can be verified. 10 people from that group also have been returned, and many of them now are in Armenian prison. So they've been something more than 30 detained Armenian military servicemen as a result of Armenian provocation in November, and 40 or maybe 41, 42 as a result of the military provocation in last November. So we do not hide the number. An Armenian side was provided a list of names and surnames and date of birth of all of them. So they know it, international institutions know it, we do not hide it, it is not a secret, and decision of our court is also open to the public, so everybody knows how many of them there are. But again, it's a matter of justice, and those of them who did not commit any crime, who did not kill Azerbaijanis, have been released. As I said, more than 100. Those of them who committed minor crimes, as far as I know, they received very small sentences. And those of them who participated in killing of Azerbaijanis, they must be brought to justice as in any other country. But again, these people have been detained at least 20 days after the Second Karabakh War ended. On the 26th of November, they've been sent to liberated territories, and they've been detained in the beginning of December last year. And the next group, as I said, this November. So this is absolutely transparent picture.
And there's no chance these people will be treated as prisoners of war and, according to the ceasefire agreement, returned to the Armenian side?
As I said already, 10 of them have been returned just 10 days ago. And the process based on humanitarian grounds continues. And we never said no, but it must be based on a legal framework in Azerbaijan, on justice, and on humanism. So the combination of this factor is here, and the process is ongoing. Therefore, of course, we cannot exclude that this process will continue. I cannot tell you now when and how, in what stages, but it will continue.
I would like to turn to gas. As you know, the EU reserves keep going down these days, and the prices of gas keep going up, while tensions with Russia, which is our main supplier of gas, with 40% of our imports, are in one of the worst moments. Of course, your economy, Azerbaijan economy, is based on oil and gas exports, especially to the EU, to Western countries. So I would like just to know what is your analysis of the current situation, and how do you think the EU and probably the region overcome this current crisis?
First of all, I'd like to say that we are working actively on diversification of our economy and to reduce dependence on oil and gas. And if you look at the structure of our GDP, the oil and gas factor is less than 50%. But in our export, of course, these are the main products of our export, and the export is growing with respect to natural gas. The reasons of the current gas price crisis, if I may call it so, I don't know. Frankly speaking, I'm not interested. What is the reason? What we were doing, we were just doing our homework. We were attracting multi-billion investments to oil and gas sector, and working on one of the major infrastructure projects of the 21st century, Southern Gas Corridor, which was completed the last day of the last year. The fourth segment of that project, Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, was commissioned 31st December 2020. Since that time, our exports to Europe started. Before that, our exports were going primarily to Turkey and to Georgia. So now, among recipients of our gas, the biggest is Italy, among new countries, Greece and Bulgaria. And there is a potential to expand the geography. This year we already exported to EU more than 7 billion cubic meters of gas. Next year we plan 9, 2023 we plan 11, and it can grow. But of course, you know that the gas market is different from oil market. You need to have contracts. All the gas which we now extract for export have been contracted before we inaugurated the pipeline. That's how gas business works. Therefore, in order for us to plan increase of production or to plan cooperation with new members of EU, we need to engage in negotiations on practical level and to evaluate the potential of that market, evaluate the connectivity of gas infrastructure systems in Europe. I know that now the work is going in order to make more connections. And to plan, because our gas is sold on the long-term contracts, and we obey to the contracts 100%. So Azerbaijan is a reliable partner for EU, and this issue, of course, is permanently on our agenda. So my assessment is that we have huge deposits of natural gas. We have a shorter transportation route than a traditional supplies of natural gas to Europe. Our gas is new for European market because, as you said, production in EU and some European countries not members of EU is going down. And we all know that demand for natural gas in Europe will grow because of some decisions made by some countries with respect to their energy strategy. And Azerbaijan here, as a reliable partner, as a friend to Europe, as a country which already completed all the infrastructure works. Imagine 3,500 kilometers of pipeline from Baku to Italy. Part of it goes under the sea. Was done. So everything is ready and gas is coming. So only what we need to do is to engage closely with the European Commission and with member states, those who want to get more gas from us, or those who want to get new gas from us, and to start negotiations. We're ready.
I would like to know if this new gas corridor that you implemented this last year, the TAP, has been something that has been brought out in conversations with Mr. Putin. Is this something that worries Mr. Putin because it represents an alternative to Russian gas?
No, frankly speaking, I can tell you that never with President Putin we discuss this issue, though we meet regularly several times a year and we are permanent on the telephone conversation, but never he raised this issue because I think this issue of competition is largely exaggerated. Our gas supply can by no way compete with Russian gas supply. Russian export to Europe is hundreds of billions of cubic meters and is growing. Our export to Europe, as I said already, is not a competition, and we never looked at it as a competition. For us, this project was a commercial project of commerciality, because now when all the infrastructure pipeline works have finished, the internal rate of return of Chardonnay's gas deposit, which is a main source of gas supply, of our gas supply to Europe and other countries, the internal rate of return increased. So it became a very, very attractive from commercial point of view. So we had huge deposits of gas. We needed to have a market. What could be a market for us? It cannot be Russia, because Russia itself is exporting. It cannot be big market Georgia, because Georgia's demand is relatively small. It can be Turkey. And further down, Europe. That's what we've done. Supplies to Turkey started in 2006 and was growing steadily. And supplies to Europe started now. So it's for us, it's a commercial. It was politicized unfortunately, to a large degree without any grounds. And Russian Federation, of course, its leadership clearly understands the real substance of the story. Our gas is nowhere alternative. It's just additional supply, and which is demanded, which is needed for consumers. For instance, now our gas makes about 20% of Turkish demand, close to 90% of Georgian demand, and by the time we increase the supply to EU, we'll also make a substantial part if in EU some member states demand.
I would like to do a final question about drones. They were very important on your side in the war with Armenia, and I would like to know your assessment about that. And if I'm correct, you have drones with technology from Israel and Turkey, and I would like to know if those drones will be now sold to the world or something like that. Is it like you have gathered, I mean, you have the possibility to make them, produce them on your own and resell them to the world? Is the world interested in that? Is it, I mean, in the end, it's a reflection around modern warfare and how drones have become essential part of these modern wars.
Yes, it's a general assessment by international military specialists that Azerbaijan conducted the war of 21st century. No one before us conducted the war in such a way. It was not only drones, it was a very accurate reconnaissance. It was integration of, as you said, drones from both countries, Turkish and Israeli. Israeli drones, we have surveillance drones and the kamikaze drones. Turkish drones, we have surveillance drones and fighter drones. And to integrate this in a single military operation, of course, was not easy. The same with our air defense system. We have air defense system of Israel, air defense system of Russia, S-300. We have air defense book. So to integrate this air defense was a serious target, and by efficient use of air defense, we protected us from big tragedy, because Armenia was launching the ballistic missiles against us and destroying sleeping cities. And the city of Ganja several times suffered an attack by Scud missiles, and they were targeted to destroy the living compounds. They used Iskander-M ballistic missiles, which they used the last day to destroy Shusha. There was not a one. Therefore, many of these missiles were intercepted by our air defense. So air defense, drones, artillery. The drones were giving target to artillery. It's not a secret any longer that in the first days of war we were using the small light airplanes for discovery of the Armenian air defense system. The pilot was just jumping out, and the small plane, for agriculture purposes, these planes are being used. We're going to the positions, and Armenian air defense was discovering itself by attacking this useless target, and then we were destroying the Armenian air defense. So combination of these factors, plus first is motivation and courage of our soldiers and officers who sacrificed their lives. Almost 3,000 Azerbaijanis died for their motherland. All these factors played a decisive role in the victory in a very difficult geographical conditions, because we had to climb to the mountains. In the conditions where Armenian for almost 30 years created 6 lines of fortifications, mines. Only after war we have almost 200 people killed or injured on the landmines. And of course all that created the grounds for our victory. And with respect to the drones, we are continuing to purchase them. After the war ended, we signed new contracts to buy new modifications. And at the same time, we are also, as you said, producing the surveillance drones, not fighter and not kamikaze. And these drones are available for the market. Azerbaijan exports its military products to more than 30 countries. And we have already developed a military industrial complex which produces our basic needs. And we continue that because, as I said, there is still a threat of Armenian revanchism. There is still a threat of destabilization. So we must be always ready to defend our borders.
Has the result of the war increased interest in your warfare products?
Yes, of course. That and also interest in our experience, because we've been approached already by several countries which want to learn our experience, how we did it. And, but again, as a commander-in-chief who was from the first until the last day of the war in charge, I can tell you that it will be difficult to explain how we did it, because you need to feel it. Because we were suffering from occupation, from humiliation, from arrogance of Armenians for almost 30 years. They were sitting on our lands, destroying our lands, claiming that this land belongs to them, contradicting all the basic international organizations' documents, United Nations Security Council, OSCE, Council of Europe, European Parliament. All of them adopted resolutions supporting us. But they were just sitting there and declaring that they will sit there forever. So motivation and spirit were the main factors of our victory, and courage. This was a matter of national dignity and national pride. So though we are approached by many how we did it, I think it will take many years to explain.
Well, thank you so much for your time, for the interview.
Thank you.
And good luck today
Thank
with
you.
your meetings and the following days.